Today our topic is American Navy or the naval forces of the United States. George Washington on 15 November 1781 told the Marquis de Lafayette, the American military officer in the Revolutionary War of America, "It follows then as certain as that night succeeds the day, that without a decisive naval force we can do nothing definitive, and with it everything honorable and glorious." Again in 1786, August 15, George Washington told Marquis de Lafayette, the military officer, "Would to heaven we had a navy able to reform those enemies to mankind or crush them into non-existence." John Adams, who was an American statesman, diplomat and attorney, writer and founding father, who served as the second president of the United States from 1797 to 1801, endeavored, "Naval power is the natural defense of the United States." The Navy was rooted in the colonial seafaring tradition, which produced a large community of sailors, captains, and shipbuilders. In the early stages of the American Revolutionary War, Massachusetts had its own Massachusetts Naval Militia. The rationale for establishing a national navy was debated in the Second Continental Congress. Supporters argued that a navy would protect shipping, defend the coast, and make it easier to see out sport from foreign countries. Detractors countered that challenging the British Royal Navy, then the world's preeminent naval power, was a foolish undertaking. Commander-in-Chief George Washington resolved the debate when he commissioned the ocean-going schooner USS Hannah to interdict British merchantmen and reported the captures to the Congress. On 13 October 1775, the Continental Congress authorized the purchase of 2 vessels to be armed for a cruise against British merchantmen. This resolution created the Continental Navy and is considered the first establishment of the U.S. Navy. The Continental Navy achieved mixed results. It was successful in a number of engagements and raided many British merchant vessels, but it lost 24 of its vessels and at one point was reduced to 2 in active service. In August 1785, after the Revolutionary War had drawn to a close, Congress had sold Alliance, the lost ship remaining in the Continental Navy due to a lack of funds to maintain the ship or support a navy. In 1972, the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Elmo Zumwalt, authorized the Navy to celebrate its birthday on 13 October to honor the establishment of the Continental Navy in 1775. The naval re-establishment during the period of Civil War. The United States was without a navy for nearly a decade, a state of affairs that exposed U.S. maritime merchant ships to a series of attacks by the Barbary pirates. The sole armed maritime presence between 1790 and the launching of the U.S. Navy's first warships in 1797 was the U.S. Revenue Marine, the primary predecessor of the U.S. Coast Guard. Although the U.S. RCS, United States Revenue Cutter Service, conducted operations against the pirates depredations for outstripped its abilities, and Congress passed the Naval Act of 1794 that established a permanent standing navy on 27 March 1794. The Naval Act ordered the construction and manning of 6 frigates, and by October 1797, the first 3 were brought into service. U.S., United States, USS Constellation, and USS Constitution. Due to his strong posture on having a strong standing navy during this period, John Adams is often called the father of the American Navy. In 1798 to 99, the Navy was involved in an undeclared quasi-war with France from 1801 to 1805. In the First Barbary War, the U.S. Navy defended U.S. ships from the Barbary pirates, blockaded the Barbary ports, and executed attacks against the Barbary fleets. The U.S. Navy saw substantial action in the War of 1812, where it was victorious in 11 single-ship duels with the Royal Navy. It proved victorious in the Battle of Lake Erie and prevented the region from becoming a threat to American operations in the area. The result was major victory for the U.S. Army at the Niagara frontier of the war and the defeat of the Native American allies of the British at the Battle of the Thames. Despite this, the U.S. Navy was unable to prevent the British from blockading its ports and landing troops. But after the War of 1812 ended in 1815, the U.S. Navy primarily focused the attention on protecting American shipping assets, sending squadrons to the Caribbean and the Mediterranean, where it participated in the Second Barbary War that ended piracy in the region, South America, Africa, and the Pacific. From 1819 to the outbreak of the Civil War, the Africa Squadron operated to suppress the slave trade, seizing 36 slave ships, although its contribution was smaller than that of the much larger British Royal Navy. During the Mexican-American War, the U.S. Navy blockaded Mexican ports, capturing or burning the Mexican fleet in the Gulf of California and capturing all major cities in Baja California Peninsula. In 1846 to 1848, the Navy successfully used the Pacific Squadron under Commodore Robert Stockton and its Marines and Blue Jackets to facilitate the capture of California with large-scale land operations, coordinated with the local militia organized in the California Battalion. The Navy conducted the U.S. military's first large-scale amphibious joint operation by successfully landing 12,000 Army troops with their equipment in one day at Veracruz, Mexico. When larger guns were needed to bombard Veracruz, Navy volunteers landed large guns and manned them in the successful bombardment and capture of the city. It is noticeable when the larger guns were needed to bombard Veracruz. Navy volunteers landed large guns and manned them in the successful bombardment and capture of the city. The successful landing and capture of Veracruz opened the way for the capture of Mexico City and the end of the war. The U.S. Navy established itself as a player in United States foreign policy through the actions of Commodore Matthew Perry in Japan, which resulted the Convention of Kanagawa in 1854. Naval power played a significant role during the American Civil War, in which the Union had a distinct advantage over the Confederacy on the seas. A Union blockade on all major ports shut down exports and the coastal trade, but blockade runners provided a thin lifetime. The Brown Water Navy, components of the U.S. Navy, control of the river systems made internal travel difficult for Confederates and easy for the Union. The war saw ironclad warships in combat for the first time at the Battle of Hampton Roads in 1862, which pitted USS Monitor against CSS Virginia. For 2 decades after the war, however, the U.S. Navy's fleet was neglected and became technologically obsolete. In 20th century, the U.S. Navy development. Woodrow Wilson, the President of the United States, said, "Our ships are our natural bulwarks." A new modernization program beginning in the 1880s, when the first steel-hulled warships stimulated the American steel industry, and the new Steel Navy was born. This rapid expansion of the U.S. Navy and its easy victory over the Spanish Navy in 1898 brought a new respect for American technical quality. Rapid building up of first Perry dreadnoughts, then dreadnoughts, brought the U.S. in line with the navies of countries such as Britain and Germany. What is dreadnought? You must have to know about the word dreadnought. It was the predominant type of battleship in the early 20th century. The first of the kind, the Royal Navy's dreadnought, had such an impact when launched in 1906 that similar battleships built after her were referred to as dreadnoughts, and earlier battleships became known as Perry dreadnoughts. Her design had 2 revolutionary features: an all-big gun armament scheme with an unprecedented number of heavy caliber guns, and steam turbine propulsion, as dreadnoughts became a crucial symbol of national power. The arrival of these new warships renewed the naval arms race between the United Kingdom and Germany. Dreadnought races sprang up around the world, including in South America, lasting up to the beginning of the World War I. Successive designs increased rapidly in size and made use of improvements in armament, armor, and propulsion throughout the dreadnought era. Within 5 years, new battleships outclassed dreadnought herself. These more powerful vessels were known as super dreadnoughts. Most of the original dreadnoughts were scrapped after the end of World War I under the terms of the Washington Naval Treaty, but many of the newer super dreadnoughts continued serving throughout World War II. The vast resources have been consumed in the building of the dreadnought. In the 20th century, there was only one battle between large dreadnought fleets. At the Battle of Jutland in 1916, the British and German navies clashed with no decisive result. The term dreadnought gradually dropped from use after World War I, especially after the Washington Naval Treaty, as virtually all remaining battleships shared dreadnought characteristics. It can also be used to describe battle cruisers, the other type of ship resulting from the dreadnought revolution. In 1907, most of the Navy's battleships, with several support vessels dubbed the Great White Fleet, were showcased in a 14-month circumnavigation of the world, ordered by President Theodore Roosevelt. It was a mission designed to demonstrate the Navy's capability to extend to the global theater. By 1911, the U.S. had begun building the super dreadnoughts at a pace to eventually become competitive with Britain. The 1911 also saw the first naval aircraft with the Navy. which would lead to the informal establishment of United States Naval Flying Corps to protect shore bases. It was not until 1921 U.S. naval aviation truly commenced. The interwar years and the World War I. During World War I, the U.S. Navy spent much of its resources protecting and shipping hundreds of thousands of soldiers and Marines of the American Expeditionary Force and war supplies across the Atlantic in U-boat infested waters with the cruiser and transport force. It also concentrated on laying the North Sea mine barrage. Hesitation by the senior command meant that naval forces were not contributed until late 1917. Battleship Division 9 was dispatched to Britain and served as the 6th Battle Squadron of the British Grand Fleet. Its presence allowed the British to decommission some older ships and reuse the crews on smaller vessels. Destroyers and U.S. Naval Air Force units. The units, like the Northern Bombing Groups, contributed to the anti-submarine operations. The strength of the United States Navy grew under an ambitious shipbuilding program associated with the Naval Act of 1916. Naval construction, especially of battleships, was limited by the Washington Naval Conference of 1921-22. Their craft carriers USS Saratoga CV-3 and USS Lexington CV-2 were built on the hulls of partially built battle cruiser that had been cancelled by the treaty. The New Deal and Public Works Administration funds to build warships such as USS Yorktown CV-5 and USS Enterprise CV-6. By 1936, with the completion of USS Wasp CV-7 and U.S. Navy possessed a carrier fleet of 165,000 tons displacements, although this figure was nominally recorded as 135,000 tons to comply with treaty limitations. Franklin Roosevelt, the number 2 official in the Naval Department during World War I, appreciated the Navy and gave it strong support. In return, senior leaders were eager for innovation and experimented with new technologies such as magnetic torpedoes and developed a strategy called War Plan Orange for victory in the Pacific in a hypothetical war with Japan that would eventually become reality. The World War II and the U.S. Navy. The U.S. Navy grew into formidable force in the years prior to World War II, with battleships production being restarted in 1937, commencing with USS North Carolina BB-55. Though ultimately unsuccessful, Japan tried to neutralize the strategic threat with the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor on 7 December 1941. Following American entry into the war, the U.S. Navy grew tremendously as the United States was faced with the two-front war on the seas. It achieved notable acclaim in the Pacific theater, where it was instrumental to the Allies' successful Iceland Hoping campaign. The U.S. Navy participated in many significant battles, including the Battle of the Coral Sea, the Battle of Midway, the Solomon Islands campaign, the Battle of Philippine Sea, the Battle of Leyte Gulf, and the Battle of Okinawa. By 1943, the Navy's size was larger than the combined fleets of all the other combatant nations in World War II. By war's end in 1945, the U.S. Navy had added hundreds of new ships, including 18 aircraft carriers, 8 battleships, and had over 70% of the world's total numbers and total tonnage of naval vessels of 1,000 tons or greater. At its peak, the U.S. Navy was operating 6,768 ships on VJ Day in August 1945. Doctrine had significantly shifted by the end of the war. The U.S. Navy had followed in the footsteps of the navies of Great Britain and Germany which favored concentrated groups of battleships as their main offensive naval weapons. The development of the aircraft carrier and its devastating utilization by the Japanese against the US at Pearl Harbor, however, shifted US thinking. The Pearl Harbor attack destroyed or took out of action a significant number of US Navy battleships. This placed much of the burden of retaliating against the Japanese on the smaller number of aircraft carriers. During World War II, some 40 lakh Americans served in the United States Navy. US Navy during the Cold War period. The potential for armed conflict with the Soviet Union during the Cold War pushed the US Navy to continue its technological advancement by developing new weapon systems, ships and aircraft. US naval strategy changed to that of forward deployment in support of US allies with an emphasis on carrier battle groups. The Navy was a major participant in the Vietnam War, blockaded Cuba during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and through the use of ballistic missile submarines, became an important aspect of the United States nuclear strategic deterrence policy. The U.S. Navy conducted various combat operations in the Persian Gulf against Iran in 1987 and in 1988. Most notably, Operation Praying Mantis. The Navy was extensively involved in Operation Argent Fury, Operation Desert Shield, Operation Desert Storm, Operation Deliberate Force, Operation Allied Force, Operation Desert Fox, and Operation Southern Watch. The U.S. Navy has also been involved in search and rescue and search and salvage operations, sometimes in conjunction with vessels of other countries as well as with U.S. Coast Guard ships. Two examples are the 1966 Palomare's B-52 crash incident and the subsequent search for missing hydrogen bombs, and Task Force 71 of the 7th Fleet's operation in search for Korean Airlines fighter or Flight 007 shot down by the Soviets on 1st September 1983. The 21st century and the U.S. Navy. Admiral Carlisle A.H. Trost said, "When a crisis confronts the nation, the first question often asked by policymakers is, what naval forces are available and how fast can they be on station?" The U.S. Navy continues to be a major support to U.S. interest in the 21st century. Since the end of the Cold War, it has shifted its focus from preparation for large-scale war with the Soviet Union to special operations and strike missions in regional conflicts. The Navy participated in Operations Enduring Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom, and is a major participant in the ongoing war on terror. Largely in this capacity, development continues on new ships and weapons, including the Girard or Ford-class aircraft carrier and littoral combat ship. Because of its size, weapons technology, and ability to project force far from U.S. shores, the current U.S. Navy remains an asset for the United States. Moreover, it is the principal means through which the U.S. maintains international global order, namely by safeguarding global trade and protecting allied nations. In 2007, the U.S. Navy joined with the U.S. Marine Corps and U.S. Coast Guard to adopt a new maritime strategy called a Cooperative Strategy for 21st Century Sea Power that raises the notion of prevention of war to the same philosophical level as the conduct of war. The strategy was presented by the Chief of Naval Operations, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and Commandant of the Coast Guard at the International Sea Power Symposium in Newport, RI on 17 October 2007. The strategy recognized the economic links of the global system and how any disruption due to regional crisis, man-made or natural, can adversely impact the U.S. economy and quality of life. This new strategy charts a course for the Navy, Coast Guard, and Marine Corps to work collectively with each other and international partners to prevent these crises from occurring or reacting quickly should one occur to prevent negative impacts on the U.S. In 2010, Admiral Gary Rowehead, Chief of Naval Operations, noted that demands on the Navy have grown as the fleet has shrunk, and that in the face of the declining budgets in the future, the U.S. Navy must rely even more on international partnership. In its 2013 budget request, the Navy focused on retaining all 11 big deck carriers at the expense of cutting numbers of smaller ships and delaying the SSBN replacement. By the next year, the USN found itself unable to maintain 11 aircraft carriers in the face of the expiration of budget relief offered by the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2013. And CNO Jonathan Greenert said that a 10-ship carrier fleet would not be able to sustainably support military requirements. The British First Sea Lord George Zambellas said that the USN had switched from outcome-led to resource-led planning. One significant change in U.S. policymaking that is having a major effect on naval planning is the pivot to East Asia. In response, the Secretary of the Navy, Ray Mabus, stated in 2015 that 60% of the total U.S. fleet will be deployed to the Pacific by 2020. The Navy's most recent 30-year shipbuilding plan, published in 2016, calls for a future fleet of 350 ships in order to meet the challenges of an increasingly competitive international environment. A provision of the 2018 National Defense Authorization Act called for expanding the naval fleet to 355 ships as soon as practicable, but did not establish additional funding nor a timeline. The structure of the U.S. Navy: the President is the Commander-in-Chief, and one is the Secretary of Defense, and it has two branches. The one administrative and the second is operational. In administrative, the Secretary of the Navy is on the top, and the subordinate to Secretary is the Chief of Naval Operations, and on the third layer, the shore establishments. And in the operational side, the Unified Combatant Commanders are on the head title, and operating forces and the fleets which have to deal subserviently with the Unified Combatant Commanders. The U.S. Navy falls under the administration of the Department of the Navy, under civilian leadership of the Secretary of Navy. The most senior naval officer is the Chief of Naval Operations and 4-star admiral, who is immediately under and reports to the Secretary of the Navy. At the same time, the Chief of the Naval Operation is a member of the Joint Chief of Staff, which is the second highest deliberative body of the armed forces after the United States National Security Council, although it only plays an advisory role to the President and does not nominally form part of the chain of command. The Secretary of the Navy and Chief of the Naval Operations are responsible for organizing, recruiting, training, and equipping the Navy so that it is ready for operation under the commanders of the Unified Combatant Commands. The forces who operate. There are 9 components in the operating forces of the U.S. Navy: the United States Fleet Forces Command, formerly United States Atlantic Fleet, United States Pacific Fleet, United States Naval Forces, Central Command, United States Naval Forces, Europe, Naval Network, Navy Reserve, United States Naval Special Warfare Command, Operational Test and Evaluation Force, and Military Sea Lift Command. Fleet Forces Command controls a number of unique capabilities, including Military Sea Lift Command, Naval Expeditionary Combat Command, and Navy Cyber Forces. The United States Navy has 7 active numbered fleets: 2nd, 3rd, 5th, 7th, and 6th Fleet, and 10th fleets are each led by a Vice Admiral, and the 4th Fleet is led by a Rear Admiral, and these 7 fleets are further grouped under Fleet Forces Command: the former Atlantic Fleet, Pacific Fleet, Naval Forces Europe Africa, Naval Forces Central Command, whose commander also doubles as Commander, 5th Fleet. The first 3 commands being led by 4-star admirals. The United States' 1st Fleet existed after the Second World War from 1947, but it was redesignated the 3rd Fleet in early 1973. The United States' 2nd Fleet was deactivated in September 2011, but re-established in August 2018, and heightened tensions with Russia. It is headquartered in Norfolk, Virginia, with responsibility over the East Coast and North Atlantic. In early 2008, the Navy reactivated the United States 4th Fleet to control operations in the area controlled by Southern Command, which consists of U.S. assets in and around Central and South America. Other number fleets were activated during World War II and later deactivated, renumbered, or merged. The shore establishments. The shore establishments exist to support the mission of the fleet through the use of facilities on land. Among the commands of the shore establishment as of April 2011 are the Naval Education and Training Command, the Naval Meteorology and Oceanography Command, the Naval Information Warfare Systems Command, the Naval Facilities Engineering Command, the Naval Supply Systems Command, the Naval Air Systems Command, the Naval Sea Systems Command, the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery, the Bureau of Naval Personnel, the United States Naval Academy, the Naval Safety Center, the Naval Strike and Air Warfare Center, and the United States Naval Observatory. Official Navy websites list the office of the Chief of Naval Operations and the Chief of the Naval Operation as part of the shore establishment, but these two entities effectively sit superior to the other organizations, playing a coordinating role. The Navy relationship with other services branches, the United States Marine Corps and the United States Coastal Guard and other bases. Some important finger points questions and their answers. U.S. Navy was founded in 1775 on 13 October, almost 244 years ago. The naval warfare, the role of the Navy is power projection and nuclear deterrence and sea lift. The size of the Navy is 336,978 active duty personnel, and the civilian employees in the Navy are numbered 2,79,471, and the reserves personnel numbers are 1,01,583, and the deployable ships are 290 in 2019, and the total ships are 480, and the ships 3,900 plus Department of Navy manned aircraft combined. U.S. Navy operates 2,623 manned aircraft, and the U.S. Marine Corps operates 1,304 manned aircraft. U.S. Navy is the part of the Department of the Navy, and its headquarters in Arlington, Pentagon, Virginia. And its motto is always courageous official, Semper Fortis, and also the non-Sibi, said patri, in English not for self, but for country. The color of the uniform or the army or the navy color is blue and gold. And the march, that is anchors away, play, help, info. And anniversaries on 13th October of every year. And the engagement, that is a long list of the engagement. Number 1, the American Revolutionary War, Quasi War, First Barbary War, War of 1812, Second Barbary War, West Indies anti-piracy operations, Seminole Wars, African anti-slavery operations, Aegean Sea anti-piracy operations, First Sumatran expedition, United States exploration expedition, Patriot War, Second Sumatran expedition, Ivory Coast expedition, capture of Monterrey, Mexican American War, bombardment of Greytown, Battle of Taiho Bay, First Fiji expedition, Filibuster War, Second Opium War, Second Fiji expedition, Reform War, Paraguay expedition, American Civil War, bombardment of Kwai Nohon, Shimonoseki campaign, Formosa expedition, United States expedition to Korea, Egyptian expedition 1882, and Bering Sea anti-poaching operations, Kingdom of Hawaii overthrow, Second Samoan Civil Wars, and Banana Wars, the Spanish-American War, Negro Rebellion, occupation of Nicaragua, occupation of Haiti, occupation of Dominican Republic in 1916, and Philippine-American War, Boxer Rebellion, World War I, bombardment of Samson, World War II, Korean War, 1958 Lebanon crisis, Vietnam War, occupation of the Dominican Republic in 1965, Iranian hostage rescue, multinational force in Lebanon, invasion of Grenada, bombing of Libya in 1986, tanker war, Ernestville, Prime Chance, Eager Glacier, Nimby Archer, and Praying Mantis operations, invasion of Panama, Gulf War, Iraqi no-fly zones, Somali Civil War, Bosnian War, Kosovo War, International Force for East Timor, Operation Enduring Freedom, Afghanistan 2001-2014, Philippines, Horn of Africa, Pankasi Gorge, Trans-Sahara, Caribbean and Central America, Iraq War, Operation Burnt Frost, Operation Odyssey, Dawn 2014 intervention against ISIL, Operation Inherent Resolve, War in Afghanistan 2015 and 2017, Sharet missile strike. The question of how big is the Navy in the world? With around 290 ships in recent years, the U.S. Navy is not the largest in the world, but it is the most powerful. The United States has 11 aircraft carriers, the largest military vessels in the world, while China and Russia each have only one. The number of sailors in the U.S. Navy is 336,978 on active duty and 101,583 in the ready reserve. The U.S. Navy is the third largest of the U.S. military service branches in terms of personnel. The Navy of the China has more warships than the United States Navy. the People's Liberation Army Navy plan, informally known as the Chinese Navy, recently hit a landmark number of 300 ships, 13 more than the US Navy. Who can win the naval war if US and China go to fight with each other? It is a very predictable and philosophical question, because if the navy is bigger than the navy of our adversary, it is not predictable that who will win the naval war. But it is noted in the American corridors that US Navy would win. US has by far the greatest carrier fleet in the world. China already has one carrier, is almost ready to sail another, and may eventually build a half dozen or more to assert Chinese power in the Western Pacific and beyond. Moreover, the US Navy is well experienced in the naval waters, and the Chinese Navy has no such experience. The level of experience is very, very important to maintain research and to analyze the situation and the potential of the Navy, and the comparison between the naval warships and also the Marines and the naval personnel. The very important thing is thinkable that the installation and the storage of the weapons, atomic weapons, in the submarines, those are threatening, and the balance of power can be lopsided. In 1991, the naval deployments in support of Operation Desert Storm against Iraq, the aircraft carrier USS America CV-66 deployed with its nuclear weapons Dvian, W-Dvian, and B-61 nuclear strike bombs and B-57 nuclear depth bombs. The nuclear installation on the deployments of the ships can threat the adversary, because the American ships always carrying the nuclear weapons when they're moving and they're navigating in the international waters, where the China has no such objectives, and whether they are having such nuclear weapons or nuclear missiles during the navigation in the Asia Pacific and other international waters. We can analyze about the future war strategies if America and China go to a naval competition and they start with their naval forces and initiate a new war in the international water. Who will win the war? The answer to this question may be analyzed in the competitive situation of the China and America, and the devastative scope may be immeasurable if they go to such type of war.